Hello, friends. I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Doing something a bit different this week. 5 days, 5 things to get to know me. 25 things that have impacted my life, influenced me, whatever it might be. Today, we're talking about video games. 5 video games that impacted me. I could go way, way back, and maybe we will. I only wrote down four. So maybe we will go all the way back. I'm old, 44. So I've been around technically since like the dawn of video games, but not really. When I was a kid, I had a cousin who was like 11 or 12 years older he was 15 years older than me. He was older. And he had muscular dystrophy, and so I went to my aunt's house every day after school and got to hang out with him, and he was fascinating. He had an Atari entertainment system. This was prior to Nintendo, so before Nintendo existed in the United States, there was Atari. The Atari 2600 was this classic wood grain thing everybody knows. He had an Atari 800 or 400, which was a personal computer. It had a keyboard, had a tape deck so you could load programs and save things. It could play all those same games that the 2600 could play, but this was a computer. And the first game that I played on that was just fascinating was a game called... Am I seriously going to blank on this right now? It was an adventure game. It was Pitfall. It was an adventure game, dude in a hat, swinging on vines. That game was very difficult, for one. Number two, his cartridge had a fault, so it sometimes would freeze and you couldn't continue and had to take it out, put it back in, and start over again. I never finished the game, but that game, like, it really had a huge impact on me, like wanting to explore, wanting to go out into the world and go out into the woods and explore and find new things. Yeah. So that one, so then Nintendo happened. I wasn't allowed to have a Nintendo, so I never had one. But things like The Legend of Zelda, I played whenever I could get my hands on it at a friend's house. There's things I played at my bus stop, like Street Fighter had a big impact. But I fast forwarded. Actually, I didn't fast forward too far. On the list, I actually have Wolfenstein 3D listed, which was probably late 80s, early 90s when that came out. And I cannot tell you how many times I played through the entire game. Many, many, many times. I downloaded level editors that people created so we can make our own levels. Wolfenstein 3D just was unbelievable to a kid like me. And it spawned, this is going to sound bad, but it spawned a lifelong love of video games about, killing Nazis. I sought out World War II video games for a long time. Now we're going to fast forward to adulthood. I got my N64 in the military. Some friends got it for me for Christmas. It was unbelievable of them. And Ocarina of Time. I mean, what can I say? That game... I went for probably 3 or 4 years, or maybe longer, without playing video games. Like I just I skipped the Game Boy Color and Advance, and I didn't really have an interest in video games that much anymore. I was playing a lot more board games at the time, playing Magic the Gathering, more card games. I just didn't have video games. They bought me an N64. I got Ocarina of Time, and just God, that game was so amazing. Obviously, right? It's on everybody's top 10s for a reason. Blew my mind. And then the other 3 games on this list. Is there 3? No, 2 games. The other 2 games on this list are also N64 titles. One is Eternal Darkness. Eternal Darkness was a very Lovecraftian game where you were a girl who inherited a mansion from your dead uncle, and weird twisted shit starts happening. And the developers made it so that it seemed like the game was freezing at times. It seemed like your system would crash and reboot and you lost all your progress. There was this whole madness mechanism. It was unbelievably fascinating to me. The dark grungy, I love the dark grungy stuff. if it's not obvious through this week of lists, that stuff has always had a huge impact on me. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Go try it. And the last one would be Shadow Man. Shadow Man 64. Again, another dark, twisted, weird story about a voodoo priestess and her warrior, the Shadow Man, who goes out into the bayou and does some crazy stuff. And that is, again, a dark, twisted theme with really disturbing visuals and audios, and I've always been fascinated by that aesthetic. I will gravitate towards that aesthetic at any time. I love those sort of twists on reality that makes everything a little bit grim, a little bit darker. I've loved that sort of stuff for a very long time. So there you go, 5 video games that had a big impact on me. And I would say that the three N64 games had a big impact because they got me back into gaming, into video gaming, and I've been there ever since. Right, I've been heavily video gaming now for 20 some years, but I took a break for a while. I wasn't really that into it anymore. I was playing more board games, which might be tomorrow's list. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends, wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart as soliloquy. It's a noun meaning a dramatic, a literary form of speaking in which a character reveals his innermost thoughts when he is alone or he thinks he is alone. The most famous soliloquy in all of literature is To Be or Not to Be speech in Hamlet. Soliloquy. S-O-L-I-L-O-Q-U-I. I didn't realize that it was... You technically had to be alone. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, people don't just stand in a public place and start ranting. Unless... I mean, they do. They're generally crazy and probably homeless.